I had always loved driving at night. There was something peaceful about the empty roads, the hum of the engine, and the way the streetlights flickered past in a rhythm. That night, I was driving alone on a quiet highway, cutting through the thick darkness like a blade. It was late, past midnight, but I wasn't tired. In fact, I felt wide awake, focused on the road ahead. The sky stretched out inky and endless, the only signs of life being the occasional gas station or distant headlights. I checked the fuel gauge, half a tank left, good enough to get me home. The road signs told me I had about 50 miles to go. I rolled down the window slightly, letting the cool air in just to keep myself alert. The music was low, barely a whisper against the silence. Everything felt still. And then I saw it. A figure standing on the side of the road. At first I thought it was just a trick of the headlights, maybe a mailbox or a signpost casting a weird shadow. But no, there was definitely someone standing there, alone, right at the edge of the road. As I got closer, I could make out details. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark jacket, hands in his pockets. He wasn't hitchhiking, wasn't waving for help. He was just standing still, staring straight ahead. Not at me, not at my car, just ahead. I felt a weird pull in my chest, an instinctive sense of unease. I wasn't the type to get spooked easily, but something about him felt off. He didn't flinch as I passed, didn't turn his head, didn't move. I exhaled, shaking off the chill creeping up my spine. Just some guy, I muttered to myself. Maybe a traveler, a lost driver, or a drunk who had wandered too close to the highway. I let it go, until about a mile later I saw him again. I slammed on the brakes for a second, my heart pounding in my chest. No way that was possible. I had just passed him. How the hell was he here again? The headlights washed over him, and it was the same man, same dark jacket, same posture, standing perfectly still at the side of the road. His face was just barely out of the light, but I could feel his eyes, not looking at me, not looking at anything, just staring ahead. A sick feeling crawled up my throat. Maybe there were two of them, maybe some weird coincidence. Maybe I was just exhausted and seeing things. I forced a nervous chuckle, shaking my head. Just my mind playing tricks, I muttered. I sped up a little. No way was I stopping. The road stretched out ahead, empty and silent, except for my tires gripping the pavement. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see him standing in the distance watching me. But there was nothing. Just darkness. 5 minutes passed. 10. I let out a breath. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe. And then I saw him again. This time, he was closer to the road. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I swerved slightly, my pulse hammering in my ears. I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a coincidence. And worst of all, I was starting to feel like he knew I had noticed him. The air in the car felt thick, suffocating. My throat was dry. My foot hovered over the gas pedal, but something told me not to speed up, not to do anything sudden. Just drive, keep going, act like I hadn't seen him. I passed him again. This time, as I did, his head moved, not a full turn, not fast, just the slightest tilt. Enough for me to see part of his face, and his mouth. It was moving. But no sound came out. My stomach twisted as I passed him. His mouth was still moving, forming silent words. Words I couldn't hear, but somehow felt. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. My instinct screamed at me to not look in the rearview mirror. I did anyway, He was still standing there, but now his head was fully turned, watching me. My breath hitched. No way, no way. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing myself to focus on the road ahead. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it over the low hum of the engine. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't hallucinating. I had two choices: keep driving or stop. Stopping was not an option. I pressed the gas, just a little, making sure I wasn't doing anything too erratic. My hands were sweating. I glanced at the dashboard, 42 miles left until home. Just 42 miles. I could make it. And then, my headlights flickered, just for a second. The road ahead dimmed like a blink, and when they came back, he was in the middle of the road. I sucked in a sharp breath and yanked the wheel to the right, my tires screeching as the car swerved violently. I barely avoided hitting him. The vehicle skidded onto the shoulder, kicking up gravel as I fought to regain control. My heart slammed against my ribs as the car finally stopped, my hands trembling on the wheel. Silence. Only the sound of my own ragged breathing. I didn't want to look up. I didn't, but I had to. Slowly, my eyes lifted to the road. He was gone. The street was empty, stretching into the darkness like nothing had ever happened. No sign of him, no footprints, nothing. I swallowed hard, forcing my breath to steady. "What the hell?" I whispered. My voice sounded small, like it didn't belong in the silence around me. I reached for my phone, hands shaking as I unlocked it. Maybe I could call someone. Maybe. And then my radio turned on by itself. A soft crackle, like white noise. Static filling the cabin. And beneath the static, something else. A whisper. A voice. Saying my name. My breath caught in my throat. The voice. It wasn't distorted or garbled like an old radio signal. It was clear. Too clear. Someone was whispering my name, stretching out each syllable like they were savoring it. I fumbled with the volume knob, twisting it all the way down. The whisper didn't stop. I stabbed at the power button. The radio stayed on. A cold dread sank into my bones, my body locked up, every instinct screaming at me to move, drive, get the hell out of there, but I couldn't. My hands felt numb on the wheel, my breath shallow. Then, through the static, the whisper changed. "Why did you stop?" My vision blurred for a second. No, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't hearing things. That voice was real, and it was talking to me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. "Who are you?" My own voice barely sounded like mine. It came out weak, unsteady. The radio hissed, the static rising and falling, like something was breathing through it. "You saw me." I felt something in my chest tighten, like icy fingers curling around my ribs. A movement in the rearview mirror caught my eye. I didn't want to look. I had to. Slowly, I lifted my eyes. There he was, sitting in my back seat. A sharp, choked noise escaped my throat. My entire body went cold. He was there, right behind me, barely visible in the dim light. His face was pale, expressionless. His lips were slightly parted, as if he was still whispering. His hands rested on his lap, fingers too long, too still, and his eyes. He had no eyes, just dark, hollow sockets, staring right at me. My pulse slammed against my skull. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I wanted to run, to throw open the door and bolt into the night, but I couldn't move. Then, slowly, he started leaning forward. My muscles locked up, every fiber of my being screaming at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. It felt like something was pressing down on me, rooting me to the seat. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I watched, helpless, while he leaned closer. His hollow sockets, those empty black voids where his eyes should have been, were fixed on me. His lips kept moving, whispering words I couldn't hear anymore. And then his hand twitched. It was a small movement, just his fingers curling slightly. But it was enough to snap me out of my paralysis. I lunged for the door handle, yanking at it, but it wouldn't budge. I tried again, harder this time. Locked. Frantically, I hit the unlock button on the console. The sound of the car doors clicking open was the loudest thing in the world. I didn't waste a second. I shoved the door open and threw myself out. I hit the ground hard, gravel scraping my hands and knees. Pain shot up my legs, but I didn't care. I had to get away. I scrambled to my feet and turned to look back at the car. He wasn't there. The back seat was empty. The radio had gone silent. The engine was still running, the headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating nothing but an empty road. My pulse hammered against my ribs. That wasn't possible. I had just seen him. He had been right behind me. I wasn't imagining it. A sharp gust of wind rushed past me, cold and unnatural. It made my skin prickle like invisible fingers were brushing against me. And then I heard it. Not from the car, not from the radio, from right behind me. That whisper, that same voice. "Why are you running?" My stomach dropped. The voice was right behind me, too close, too real. The breath on the back of my neck was ice cold, like something was standing just inches away. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. My heartbeat pounded so hard I thought my ribs would crack under the pressure. Then, fingertips. Light, barely there pressure against the back of my neck, like something was testing me, feeling me. A shudder ripped through my body. My breathing came in short, panicked bursts. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms to keep myself grounded. I had two choices: run or face it. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head just enough to see from the corner of my eye. There was nothing there. Just the empty highway stretching into darkness. No man, no shadow, nothing. But that didn't make it better, because I knew I wasn't alone. The air around me felt thick, heavy, like something unseen was pressing against me from all sides. My skin prickled with an overwhelming sense of being watched. And then, my car door slammed shut. Loud, sudden, final. My head snapped toward it. The driver's seat was still empty, but the headlights flickered, once, twice, and then cut out completely, plunging me into absolute darkness. My breath hitched. Then, the engine revved, all on its own. I took a step back. The headlights flared back to life, but something was wrong. They weren't shining on the road anymore. They were pointed at me. The car was in drive, and the engine roared as the vehicle lurched forward, coming straight at me. I jumped back just in time. The car sped forward, missing me by inches. The heat from the engine seared against my skin as it barreled past, tires screeching against the pavement. My own damn car, trying to run me down. It didn't stop. It didn't slow. It just kept going. Headlights cutting through the darkness, disappearing down the road like it had a mind of its own. My chest heaved as I stood frozen on the side of the highway, completely alone. Or at least, I thought I was, until I heard footsteps. Software behind me. My entire body tensed. I didn't turn around this time. I didn't want to see. I just ran. I sprinted down the highway, my breath ragged, my legs burning. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. But the footsteps followed. At first, they were distant, then closer, closer, then right beside me. Not behind, not chasing, running alongside me. An invisible presence keeping perfect pace, matching my every step. My pulse pounded in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be in my head, a hallucination, a dream, anything but real. Then, a cold hand wrapped around my wrist. My scream caught in my throat. I tripped, my body collapsing onto the rough asphalt. Pain shot through my hands and knees, but I barely felt it, because now I wasn't alone. Something was crouching next to me. I didn't see it. I refused to look, but I felt it, the weight of its presence, the unnatural cold seeping into my skin, a slow, deliberate exhale too close to my ear, then a voice, low, hollow, wrong. You shouldn't have seen me. My body locked up. My limbs wouldn't move. My breath wouldn't come. I was trapped. And then, in the distance, I saw something. Headlights, a car, coming toward me, my only chance. I had to move. Now. I forced my body to move, but it felt like I was sinking. Like something heavy was pressed down on me, pinning me to the cold asphalt. My chest tightened, my breath coming in short, desperate gasps. The headlights were getting closer. This was it. My only chance. I dug my fingers into the ground, pushing against the weight that held me down. It didn't want to let me go. I could feel it, a presence, something unseen but crushing, suffocating. The voice came again, softer now. Stay. I clenched my teeth, ignoring the ice-cold grip clawing at my arms, and threw myself forward. The moment I broke free, the pressure vanished. Just gone, like it had never been there. I stumbled to my feet, waving my arms wildly at the approaching car. Hey, stop! My voice was hoarse, desperate. The headlights washed over me, blinding for a second. Then the car slowed. A surge of relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. Someone was here, a real person. I wasn't alone anymore. The car rolled to a stop a few feet ahead, and I ran toward it, gripping the passenger side door handle. Please, I need help. Then I saw the driver, and my stomach dropped. He was staring straight ahead, not blinking, not moving. His hands rested on the wheel, motionless. His mouth was slightly open. And then he started whispering. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew. It was the same whisper, the same one from the radio, from the road, from the thing that had been following me. It was inside the car. A sharp breath rattled in my chest. My skin prickled with a sickening, overwhelming sense of wrongness. Then, his head snapped toward me. Not a turn, not a normal movement, a snap, fast, unnatural, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. His hollow eyes locked onto mine, and then, in a voice that wasn't his, wasn't human, wasn't anything that should exist, he said my name. A cold, paralyzing dread spread through my body. Hearing my name in that voice, it didn't just scare me, it made my whole existence feel wrong. Like I wasn't supposed to be here. Like I wasn't supposed to be alive. The man in the car, or whatever was inside him, kept staring, his lips moving soundlessly, whispering words that didn't reach my ears. But I felt them, crawling under my skin, sliding into my bones. Then his mouth stretched, too wide, too unnatural. His jaw cracked as it opened further, his face contorting into something that barely looked human anymore. A low, distorted sound gurgled from his throat. A whisper, but wrong. You saw me. You let me in. Number. I staggered back, my breath ragged. My instinct screamed at me to run, but before I could, he moved. Not climbed, not shifted. He just appeared outside the car. 1 second he was behind the wheel. The next, he was standing in front of me. Too close, too fast. I gasped, nearly falling backward, but his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Cold, so cold. I felt my skin burning under his grip, but not with heat, with something else, something deeper, something sinking into me. My vision blurred. My head spun. I tried to scream, but my throat closed up. Then, everything shifted. For a split second, I wasn't on the road anymore. I wasn't even in my own body. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark. I couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even think properly. Just a swirl of shadows, whispers, and the overwhelming feeling of being trapped. A voice, my voice, echoed in the void. Help me. Then, I was back, standing on the side of the road. The man was gone. The car was gone. Everything was silent. But something was wrong. I could still feel the cold in my wrist. I looked down and saw fingerprints burned into my skin. And then, the radio in my pocket crackled to life, and a whisper slid through the static. "You're not alone anymore." I froze. The whisper slithered through the static, curling around me like invisible fingers. My heart pounded against my ribs, my breath shallow. The radio wasn't even on. I fumbled to pull it out of my pocket, my fingers shaking. The screen was dark, lifeless, but the whisper continued. Soft, crawling, like something speaking directly into my bones. I wanted to throw it, to get rid of it. But something stopped me. A feeling, a presence. I wasn't alone. I turned, slow, terrified, already knowing. Something was standing behind me. The air was thick, suffocating. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. And then, I saw it. A shadow, not cast by the headlights, not by the moon. A shape, standing inches away from me. It was tall, too tall, its limbs too long, its body wrong. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but I felt it watching. Then, the radio crackled again. "Let me in." A sharp, burning pain ripped through my wrist. I gasped, looking down. The marks, they were spreading. The blackened fingerprints twisted, curling up my arm like veins of rot, like something was sinking into me. I stumbled back. The shadow moved, not stepped, shifted, flickering like a glitch, closer, closer. I did the only thing I could. I ran. I sprinted down the highway, my pulse hammering, my lungs burning. But no matter how fast I ran, I could still feel it, the weight of it, the cold, the whisper, now inside my own head. And then, my phone rang. I gasped, nearly tripping. Who the hell would be calling me at a time like this? With shaking hands, I yanked it out of my pocket and stared at the screen. No caller ID. But that wasn't what made my blood turn to ice. It was the name flashing across the screen. It was my own. My hands turned ice cold as I stared at the screen. My own name, calling me. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the phone kept ringing, insistent, shrill, like it was demanding me to answer. I didn't want to. I had to. With a deep breath, I pressed my thumb against the screen and raised the phone to my ear. Silence. Not static, not breathing, just empty, endless silence. Then, a whisper, software familiar, my own voice. It's already inside. My body locked up, my breath hitched. The phone slipped from my fingers, shattering against the pavement. I staggered back, my mind racing, my skin burning where those blackened veins still spread up my arm. Then, the streetlights flickered. One by one, they went out. Darkness swallowed the highway, leaving me stranded in an abyss. I turned, frantically searching for a way out, for anything, anyone. but the road was empty. No cars, no sounds, no wind, no way out. Then, footsteps, not behind me, not beside me, inside me, like something was moving beneath my skin. A deep, suffocating dread settled in my chest. My vision blurred, my body trembling as the realization sank in. I hadn't escaped. I had never been running from it. I had been running with it. And now, it was part of me. The last thing I heard before everything went black was my own voice, whispering from everywhere and nowhere at once. You let me in.